Life often pushes us to unexpected crossroads. Suddenly, what seemed solid crumbles, and the only visible way out is a radical step: selling everything. For many, the idea of getting rid of hard-earned possessions sounds like failure, a personal defeat. But what if, amidst financial chaos, selling your car, your house, your furniture wasn't the end, but rather the starting point for a lighter, more prosperous new beginning? This is the story of thousands of Americans who, confronted with overwhelming debts or unique opportunities, discovered that detaching from material things was, in fact, the key to a financial freedom they had never imagined. It's not about losing. It's about redefining value and rebuilding. Sarah, a 40-year-old teacher in Chicago, felt the ground beneath her feet gradually give way, almost imperceptibly at first. What was once a comfortable life with her salary and that of her husband, David, a factory worker at an auto parts plant, turned into a nightmare of overdue bills. Credit cards, once used for small luxuries and controlled emergencies, became their only lifeline for basic expenses: groceries, gas, the electricity bill. Sarah remembered the exact moment desperation set in. It was on a cold November afternoon, trying to withdraw money from a time to buy her daughter's gym uniform, and seeing the message, insufficient funds, on all her bank accounts. At home, David's phone wouldn't stop vibrating with collection notifications. From the bank for their overdraft, from the utility company, from the cable provider. Every call was torture, every envelope in the mailbox a premonition of more debt. This was the red flag, an unmistakable sign that the debt spiral was about to swallow everything they had built. Sarah and David's story isn't unique. In the United States, millions of families silently face this same reality, often due to shame or a lack of knowledge to identify the signs. Recent data from Experian reveals that the average debt per person in the U.S. has exceeded $100,000 United States dollars, including mortgages, student loans, auto loans, and, critically, credit card debt. Delinquencies on car payments and mortgage have steadily increased since the end of the pandemic, with nearly a 30% rise in past due mortgages in the last 12 months, according to the Mortgage Bankers Association. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau points out that one of the main indicators of bankruptcy risk is the constant use of credit to cover basic expenses, a sign that disposable income is no longer sufficient for the cost of living. Sarah and David's problem wasn't just the loss of income, but the absence of a robust emergency fund and excessive reliance on credit. They had no reserve for unforeseen circumstances, and when the crisis hit, they resorted to the only tool available: more debt. You need to list all debts to whom you owe, how much you owe, the interest rate, and the payment amount. Then, list all assets, real estate, vehicles, investments, savings. Finally, record all income and all expenses, no matter how small. Sarah, when she finally sat down with David, enlisted every penny owed, from the small loan for the new TV to the thousands on credit cards. Realized that their credit card debt alone was more than a year's worth of her net salary. They were often just paying interest without even touching the principal. Many families fall into the trap of using debt to cover debt, creating a vicious cycle of interest and minimum payments that consume most of their disposable income without even reducing the principal debt. This is the point where debt becomes unsustainable. The technique for identifying this warning is simple, yet painful: an honest and detailed financial balance sheet. If expenses consistently exceed income, if minimum credit card payments consume a significant portion of income, if there are frequent delays in essential bills, or if it's necessary to use one credit card to pay off another, the warning sign is flashing. It's also crucial to observe the domino effect, when one debt leads to another and the feeling of financial control disappears. The lesson learned by Sarah and David was that denial is the greatest enemy of financial recovery. Ignoring the problem only makes it worse. The concrete result of this analysis, however painful, was the first step toward change. Recognizing the gravity of the situation allowed them to stop digging the hole and start planning how to get out of it, seeking advice, and exploring all options, including the possibility of selling assets they once considered untouchable. Michael, a 70-year-old Vietnam veteran living in a small apartment in New York, never imagined that after a lifetime of hard work and service to his country, he would be on the brink of bankruptcy. His story reflects what many experts point to as the main causes of financial collapse in the U.S., often intertwined in a complex web of misfortunes and decisions. For Michael, the crisis began with a prostate cancer diagnosis. Even with his veteran's health plan, the costs far exceeded coverage. Co-payments, medications not covered by the plan's restricted lists, and transportation costs for chemotherapy sessions in another city quickly accumulated. He had to stop working his part-time security job, and his retirement, which once seemed sufficient for his basic needs, proved fragile in the face of America's healthcare costs, known to be the highest in the world. According to the American Cancer Society, the average cost of cancer treatment can range from tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars. And even with insurance, many patients face significant medical debt. The Consumer Bankruptcy Project, which studies personal bankruptcy cases, reveals that medical expenses are one of the leading causes of bankruptcy in the U.S., affecting about 66% of all cases, even among those with insurance. This is a sad reality that impacts millions of families annually. Beyond medical expenses, another devastating cause of bankruptcy is unexpected job loss. Firms like Challenger, Gray, and Christmas, Inc., which monitor the labor market, report that waves of layoffs in various sectors, from tech to manufacturing, leave thousands of workers without a safety net, especially those who haven't built a robust emergency fund. The lack of adequate unemployment insurance or the inability to find new employment quickly can deplete savings and lead to accumulating debt. Excessive credit card and personal loan debt is the third pillar of bankruptcy. Often, this debt is driven by uncontrolled consumption, an attempt to maintain an unsustainable lifestyle, or, as in Sarah and David's case, to cover basic expenses when income isn't enough. The Federal Reserve Bank of New York reported in 2024 that total household debt in the U.S. reached a record, $17.5 trillion, with credit cards thirsties $1.1 trillion. High interest rates and the ease of obtaining credit can create an illusion of wealth that quickly unravels when repayment capacity diminishes. The lack of financial planning and the absence of education about interest, budgeting, and investments contribute to many people falling into these traps. Many Americans do not receive adequate financial education in school or at home, leaving them unprepared to deal with the complexities of adult life. The Federal Reserve's 2023 Survey of Household Economic Well-Being revealed that 35% of American adults could not cover an unexpected U.S. $400 expense without borrowing or selling something. This demonstrates the fragility of the financial situation for a significant portion of the population. The solution for Michael and millions of Americans, according to experts, begins with prevention. Building an emergency fund, even if small initially, is crucial. This could mean 3 to 6 months of basic expenses saved in a separate, easily accessible savings account. Renegotiating debts before they become unmanageable and seeking professional financial counseling are vital steps. The National Foundation for Credit Counseling offers counseling services for those seeking to get out of debt, providing personalized plans and often mediating with creditors for more favorable payment agreements. Michael, with the help of a veteran assistance program, managed to negotiate some of his medical debts and found a job adapted to his physical condition, which provided him with a small extra income and a sense of purpose. The lesson learned is that economic vulnerability can affect anyone, regardless of their life history or social status. Ignoring the signs or being ashamed to ask for help only exacerbates the situation. Seeking specialized help is not a sign of weakness, but of intelligence and proactivity. The concrete result of Michael's search for support was the restructuring of his finances, allowing him to focus on health recovery without the overwhelming burden of debt and the regaining of a sense of dignity and security. He could see a future, even with fewer resources, but with the peace of mind that there was a plan. In Phoenix, Arizona, Anna's life, a 32-year-old single mother, was a series of financial juggling acts. With 2 young children and an unstable job in the service sector, her hopes for a stable life seemed increasingly distant. The student loan debt, inherited from her attempt to get a nursing degree, which she couldn't complete, and already exceeding 40,000 United States dollars, seemed like an insurmountable mountain. One of the first and most effective is applying a structured debt repayment method, such as the debt snowball or debt avalanche method. The debt snowball method, popularized by financial guru Dave Ramsey, focuses on paying off the smallest debts first, regardless of the interest rate. The idea is to create momentum and motivation as each debt paid off, no matter how small, brings a sense of victory and pushes the person to continue. The debt avalanche method, on the other hand, prioritizes debts with the highest interest rates, saving more money in the long run, but it may take longer to see the first debt eliminated. Anna, feeling overwhelmed, opted for the snowball. She started by paying off her smallest credit card debt, which was only 800 United States dollars. Every dollar paid on that card brought a sense of relief and motivated her to continue. When the first one was paid off, the feeling of, "I can do this," spurred her on to the next debt. The rent for the small house she shared with her children became an overwhelming burden, and often, food was the only priority, leaving other bills overdue. Anna felt trapped in a cycle of despair, anxiously watching the bills pile up in her mailbox. Anna's story is that of many who seek real and effective strategies to get out of financial difficulty. Another crucial strategy is drastically reducing expenses. This doesn't just mean cutting out daily coffee. It involves a meticulous review of every item in the budget. It is essential to identify where money is being spent and where cuts can be made without compromising essentials. Many creditors are willing to negotiate smaller payments, reduce interest rates, or even forgive part of the debt if the debtor demonstrates a genuine effort to pay. It's better for them to receive something than nothing. Anna, with the help of a non-profit organization that offers free financial counseling to low-income families, managed to negotiate the terms of her student loan, obtaining an income-driven repayment plan that drastically reduced her monthly payments. This relieved immense pressure and freed up money for other debts. Anna canceled all unnecessary streaming subscriptions, stopped buying new clothes, and started cooking all meals at home, taking advantage of supermarket promotions and preparing meal prep for the week. She also explored cheaper housing options, even considering moving to a smaller apartment or splitting expenses with another family to save on rent. Bankrate, a respected financial data source, suggests that a strict budget and setting realistic savings goals are the foundation for any financial recovery, allowing every dollar to be directed towards debt repayment or savings. Renegotiating debts with creditors is also a powerful and often underutilized strategy. The lesson learned by Anna was the importance of discipline, persistence, and proactivity. There are no shortcuts to getting out of financial trouble, but with a clear plan, consistent execution, and the courage to seek help, recovery is not only possible, but transformative. She discovered that the shame of being in debt was a greater obstacle than the debt itself, and that sharing her situation with a financial counselor empowered her to act. The concrete result was that, in less than 2 years, Anna, through selling non-essential items to accelerate repayment of the smallest debt, and through total dedication to the strategies, managed to pay off her credit card debts and began building a small emergency fund. The feeling of freedom and the peace of mind from seeing her debt balance decrease brought back hope and security for her family. In San Francisco, young couple Emily and Ben, both in their 20s, were living what seemed to be the pinnacle of the American dream. With generous salaries in the booming tech industry, they enjoyed a life of apparent prosperity. However, what seemed like a financial fortress hid a subtle and dangerous trap: the absence of basic financial education. Emily, trying to access their reserves to cover the month's expenses, discovered that what she considered a robust savings account barely covered 1 month of their usual expenses, which were inflated by an unsustainable lifestyle. They made a common and devastating mistake: the belief that a high salary is synonymous with financial security, and that money would always appear to cover their consumption habits, leaving oneself vulnerable to unforeseen events like job loss or medical expenses. Not investing for the future, losing the power of compound interest, and accumulating high-interest debt without a clear repayment plan. They bought new cars every 2 years, often financed with long-term loans, dined out almost every night at trendy restaurants, and last-minute international trips were a constant on their social media, all without bothering to save, invest, or even monitor their cash flow. They believed that their high income protected them from any setback. The crisis came brutally and unexpectedly. Ben was abruptly laid off from his startup in a round of staff cuts. The shock was immense. This situation is shockingly common. The Federal Reserve Board, in its annual survey of household economic well-being, frequently points out that a significant percentage of adults, regardless of their income, do not have enough savings to cover an unexpected $400 expense. This is largely due to a lack of basic financial literacy and the prevalence of common mistakes that undermine financial health. The most frequent mistakes include living beyond one's means, spending more than one earns, not having a budget or plan for money, which leads to uncontrolled and impulsive spending, ignoring the importance of an emergency fund. The power of financial education lies in empowering people to make informed and strategic decisions about their money. The technique to avoid these mistakes begins with creating a detailed and realistic budget. Ideally, it should cover 3 to 6 months of essential expenses, kept in an easily accessible, separate account. Furthermore, education about investments, from traditional savings and certificates of deposit to the stock market, allows money to work for you, generating growth over time. Organizations like the Jumpstart Coalition for Personal Financial Literacy promote financial education from an early age, showing that the foundation for a healthy economic life is learned, not innate, and that it's never too late to start learning. This means not just tracking expenses, but actively allocating every dollar to a category: housing, food, transportation, savings, investments, and leisure. For Emily and Ben, this meant a dose of reality. They had to drastically cut their spending, learn to cook at home, plan their outings in advance, and, painfully, sell one of their luxury cars to pay off a portion of their debt. Building an emergency fund is a non-negotiable pillar of financial security. Emily and Ben, after the scare, intensely dedicated themselves to learning about personal finance. They read books by authors like Ramit Sethi and Vicky Robin, took online courses on budgeting and investments, and sought mentorship from financially savvy friends. The lesson learned was that true financial freedom is not about how much you earn, but about how you manage what you earn. It's not enough to have a good salary. You need a plan, discipline, and knowledge for that salary to work in your favor. The concrete result was that, in less than a year, they not only rebuilt their emergency reserve, but also began investing for retirement and other long-term goals, transforming their old routine of uncontrolled consumption into a life of planning, responsibility, and security, with the confidence that they were building a solid future, not just living for the present. In the heart of Texas, in a small town near Austin, lived Jessica, a 28-year-old single mother who struggled daily to support her 5-year-old daughter on a minimum wage from a coffee shop job. Despite her efforts to save every penny, buying clothes at thrift stores and making all meals at home, her bills barely met at the end of the month. Jessica felt that no matter how much she cut expenses, the financial hole was too big to be filled by sacrifices alone. She was always praised for her home cooking, especially her healthy meal preps. With a minimal initial investment in packaging and extra ingredients, she began selling meal preps to friends, neighbors, and coworkers. Word of mouth worked, and within weeks, what started as an experiment became a consistent source of income. This is the concept of a side hustle, a reality for millions of Americans. According to a 2024 survey by Side Hustle Nation, nearly half of American adults have some source of extra income, whether through freelancing, online sales, or providing services. Common examples include driving for ride-sharing apps like Uber or Lyft, giving private lessons online or in person, creating digital content for platforms like YouTube or TikTok, selling crafts on platforms like Etsy, or offering consulting services in areas of expertise. The essential thing is to identify a market demand and a skill that can meet it. For Jessica, the meal prep business not only brought in money, but also a sense of empowerment and accomplishment. She needed more than just cutting costs. She needed to increase her income. Her story illustrates the crucial importance of extra income strategies and smart investments, essential for anyone looking not only to get out of the red, but also to build prosperity and financial security. The first technique Jessica explored was generating additional income using her existing skills. In the heart of Texas, in a small town near Austin, lived Jessica, a 28-year-old single mother who struggled daily to support her 5-year-old daughter on a minimum wage from a coffee shop job. Despite her efforts to save every penny, buying clothes at thrift stores and making all meals at home, her bills barely met at the end of the month. Jessica felt that no matter how much she cut expenses, the financial hole was too big to be filled by sacrifices alone. She was always praised for her home cooking, especially her healthy meal preps. With a minimal initial investment in packaging and extra ingredients, she began selling meal preps to friends, neighbors, and coworkers. Word of mouth worked, and within weeks, what started as an experiment became a consistent source of income. This is the concept of a side hustle, a reality for millions of Americans. According to a 2024 survey by Side Hustle Nation, nearly half of American adults have some source of extra income, whether through freelancing, online sales, or providing services. Common examples include driving for ride-sharing apps like Uber or Lyft, giving private lessons online or in person, creating digital content for platforms like YouTube or TikTok, selling crafts on platforms like Etsy, or offering consulting services in areas of expertise. The essential thing is to identify a market demand and a skill that can meet it. For Jessica, the meal prep business not only brought in money, but also a sense of empowerment and accomplishment. She needed more than just cutting costs. She needed to increase her income. Her story illustrates the crucial importance of extra income strategies and smart investments, essential for anyone looking not only to get out of the red, but also to build prosperity and financial security. The first technique Jessica explored was generating additional income using her existing skills. Beyond extra income, the next crucial step is to invest intelligently. For beginners, the idea of investing can seem intimidating, reserved for millionaires or stock market experts. However, it's not about risking everything on high-risk bets, but about making money work for you, even in small amounts. For beginners, options like low-cost mutual funds, ETFs, and high-yield savings accounts are accessible and have controlled risks. Vanguard, one of the world's largest fund managers, emphasizes the importance of diversification and long-term investing, even with modest contributions. The rule of 72 illustrates the power of compound interest. Divide 72 by the annual interest rate to estimate how many years it will take for your money to double. A small amount invested today can become a large sum in the future. Jessica, with the extra money from her meal prep business, began investing small amounts, initially $50 per month, into a diversified index fund to track the performance of the U.S. stock market. She researched and used investment apps that make it easy to buy fractional shares and ETFs, making investing accessible even with little capital. She also sought to learn more about the stock market, reading books and following reputable financial advisors. The idea was to understand that investing is not a sprint, but a marathon, and that consistency is more important than the initial amount. The lesson learned by Jessica was that diversifying income and investing, even in small amounts, can dramatically transform a person's financial situation. You don't need to be an expert to start, but rather have discipline, patience, and a mindset that money can grow over time. The extra income not only alleviated immediate financial pressure, but also provided the initial capital to start investing. The concrete result was that, in less than 3 years, Jessica not only managed to pay off her most urgent credit card debts and reorganize her finances, but also built an investment portfolio that, although small, gave her the security of a more prosperous future for herself and her daughter. She went from a survival situation to one of wealth building, proving that financial freedom is achievable even for those starting from a disadvantaged position with creativity and persistence.